This is the generation of them that seek his face. This is the generation of them that seek his face. One.
Shema Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. We bless you this day. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome. Bienvenidos a nuestro estudio de la Torah. Welcome to our Torah study. We want to thank those of you that are here in our parking lot, that are joining us live. And after our time of teaching, we are going to have a time of prayer and be able to pray for your individual needs. And so be ready, those of you that are here in the Uptown area. We're catty corner to Coronado Center. You could catch us on our FM radio station. We have a low-power local FM radio station. We're talking about KOTF 88.1 here in the Uptown area. Those of you that are joining us through Facebook and or YouTube, throughout the world, we want to thank you. And at this time of tribulation, yes, this is tribulation, but remember what Yeshua says, in the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Now, we're not talking about the great tribulation. That's in the future. We're not in the great tribulation. Don't let all these people, there's all kinds of prophecy teachers and all kinds of people out there writing books and on TV bringing fear into the body of Messiah, that we're in the middle of the tribulation and what's going on in the world. This is minor stuff. What we're going through here in America and the world is minor kindergarten stuff compared to what is going to be like during the last 3.5 years of what is called the Great Tribulation. But we're not there yet. There's a lot of things that need to occur. But we want to welcome you today. And today we've already been studying our Torah portion. And our Torah portion is from the book of Numbers chapter 1. Our Parsha is Parsha Bamidbar. Bamidbar is in the wilderness. So today we're going to be doing half of Bamidbar, and then the second half, what I'm going to do is go through a summary of Shavout, because we are coming to Shavout time. In fact, next Yom Rishon. What is Yom Rishon? The first day of the week. So next first day of the week on the 31st, next what is called Sunday in the Roman calendar is first day of the week, Sunday. It is Shavuot. Now, Shavuot, as we're going to explain, is a pilgrim feast. So we're going to be here at 9 o'clock with all the men. At 10 o'clock, we're going to have another service here. And then if the situation lends itself to, we'll have a little celebration. And so we want to get you prepared for that. So today we're going to be talking about preparing for Shavuot. And then next Sabbath, the Sabbath, before Shavuot, the seventh Sabbath. Today is the sixth Sabbath before Shavuot. And so we've had, in counting of the weeks, we're in week 6. Next week is going to week 7, the 7th, 49 days from Bekurim, the first fruits. And then the day after, the 50th day, is Shavuot, the completion of the weeks. Or in the Greek, Pentecost. In fact, let me tell you a little secret here. Please let all your Pentecostal friends that Pentecost is next week. There's a lot of Pentecostal people don't even know when Pentecost is. So please, let them know. Okay, today we're going to be talking about Numbers, the book of Numbers, Bamidbar in Hebrew. And it is the book of countings. It is the book of numbers. And of course, a lot of people say, oh, I always get bogged down in those who begat who, and this begat that, and all the begats, and all the fathers, and the countings, and the numbers. But these are very important. And the reason they're important is because when we think of counting, now remember, in last week's Parsha, one of the endings of it was talking about the tithing of every part of us. And so Adonai is probably one of the world's greatest accountants. He accounts for everything. In fact, my life, your life, everybody's life, we are accountable to the Creator. Even the atheists are accountable to the Creator. Now, the atheist might get his hand and say, there is no God, there is no God, there is no God. But one day he'll stand in front of that judge. One day he will stand in front of Elohim, the Creator of the universe, and say, there is no Elohim? No, he will not be able to say that. And so, whether you are atheist, agnostic, every one of us as believers will give an accounting. Now, the accounting of the believers is going to be at the Bema seat. And that's another teaching. The accounting of the non-believer is the great white throne judgment. That's another teaching. And so Adonai likes to keep his accounts right. Let me ask you the question, are your accounts right with Adonai? Is our conscience clean before Adonai in reference to all our accounts? Every account, every word that comes out. Remember, we're going to give account. Can you imagine? Adonai is counting. He's a counter. He loves counting. He counts every word, every letter that comes out. He counts the breaths. He knows the breaths. In fact, he's such a counter that he knows how many hairs are on your head. Now, with me, he doesn't have to count too much, but he knows every hair in our head. Adonai counts all the little birds. Every bird, every animal, every living creature is accounted before Adonai. The book of Bamidbar in the wilderness is a book of countings. This is the book where things are counted. Just like the animals were counted. And why were they counted? For the tithe. So Adonai counts his people. Now, any good shepherd counts his flock. Any good shepherd counts his lambs, his sheep. Any good shepherd knows, if you're a herdsman, you know your herd. And Adonai counts his sheep. Think of it, even today, even right now, Adonai has you counted. In fact, he has those of you that are here, you're counted. Because this is a day of sacred assembly. And we're counted to the best of our ability. Those of you that are watching at home, you're counted. Those of you, in fact, every person that is keeping Shabbat today in sacred assembly, or if they can't, in their homes, Adonai is counting you, and we are standing before Adonai, and Adonai says 1, 2, 3, 4, throughout the whole world. And so over here we start with chapter 1, verse 1. Yahweh said to Moshe, by the way, this is one of the most often repeated phrases in the Torah. Vayeh davar Yahweh al Moshe. And Yahweh said to Moses, in the wilderness of Sinai. In the wilderness of Sinai. Sinai is the place of contact. Sinai is the place of encounter. Sinai is the place where the word of Elohim came and through the mouthpiece of Moses gave us his revelation of himself. Sinai, Har Sinai, the Mount of Sinai, is a very important place. The Mount of Sinai is that place where the revolution, the revelations, the resolve of Adonai is made clear. Haderech Yahweh, the way of Yahweh, is made clear. Not just in audible form, not just orally, but now in written form. In fact, it was Abraham who knew the way of Yahweh. The way of Yahweh, Yahweh had spoken to Abraham. In fact, it was Yeshua who spoke to Abraham. It was Yeshua who taught Abraham. Abraham rejoiced to see my day, Yeshua said. He saw it and was glad. Because Yeshua is Yahweh. He is I am. Ego eimi in the Greek there. Before Abraham was, ego eimi. Before Abraham was, Eye Asher Eye. The Hebrew form and the Greek form. I am that I am. This place, Sinai, in the wilderness, surrounded by wilderness, surrounded by low deserts and high deserts, surrounded by aridness, waterless places, was a place where water was flowing from the rock. And that rock, it says, was Messiah. That rock was Messiah. That's why from his bosom, Messiah's bosom, rivers of living water shall flow. And the rivers of living water are his word. The word of Yahweh is water in a thirsty land. When we are thirsty, when we are dry, it is the word of Yahweh. In fact, many have told me at this time, I am dry. You shouldn't be dry. Well, I haven't been to church. I haven't been to the building. Let me tell you, you don't need the building. You need the word of Elohim. A man and his Bible, a woman and her word is enough to bring us rivers of living water. Yes, fellowship is of vital importance. But there will come times when we will not have fellowship. when we will not have. In fact, there's many places throughout the world, even in the United States. We've gotten text messages, we've gotten emails from people living in remote areas saying, I wish I could be there with you. I see you guys singing and worshiping Adonai and reading the Torah, and oh, I wish I could be there. I can't. But you have your word. In the wilderness, you have your word. No matter what wilderness you're going through, whether it's a wilderness and you're in a nursing home, a hospital, whether you are in a prison cell, you have the word of Adonai. Wherever you are, you have the word of Adonai. In fact, it is such a blessing today that anyone could have the word. You're in a hotel room, you have the word there. Wherever you're at, you have the word. It's available. You could just go, even if you don't have a lot of money, you could just go to a thrift store and get you a New Testament for 25 cents. And the word there is alive and active, sharper than a two-edged sword. And it's piercing, and it pierces us. It doesn't matter where we're at. In the wilderness, Yahweh spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai, that place of contact. And as he spoke to him there, he came to the Ochel Moed, the tent of meeting, that sukkah of meeting, on the first day of the second month. By the way, I don't understand this. I do not understand why. I'm sure there's people that have made up reasons for this. Most of those reasons are probably wrong, but I'll tell you from the onset, I don't know why. But chapter 9, if you go just for a second here with me, and I hope you have your scriptures in front of you. If you go to chapter 9, it says, verse 1, chapter 9, verse 1 of Bamidbar of the book of Numbers. Yahweh spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the second year after the exodus from Egypt, in the first month. Now, it's interesting that chapter 9 is in the first month, but chapter 1 is on the first day of the second month. In Spanish, we would say están trocados. They're mixed up. Chapter 9 should actually be chapter 1, and chapter 1 should actually be chapter 9. Why is this so? I don't know, but I know the Holy Spirit has a reason. I don't know what it is. I would like to know. And, I'm one of those persons, and I'll tell you this from the onset, that I don't know everything. Remember there was a time when we used to know everything? You get out of Bible school, you get out of seminary, you know every answer. But then you seek and you go, and with me it's been 50 years that I've been teaching. And in the 50 years that I've been teaching, there's more stuff that I don't know now than I used to know. But you know what? I don't have a problem anymore saying, I don't know. And I wish more of us, especially pastors, rabbis, priests, would be able to say, you know what? I don't know the answer. Because if we start being mystical and Kabbalistic and all these and try to start to bring all kinds of stuff, we're probably leading the flock in the wrong way. If you really don't know it, don't say it, don't teach it. Let's go back here. And so in the second month, the second year of the Exodus, So on the first day of the second month of the second year of the Exodus, we have been in Sinai for 1 year. The Exodus was 1 year ago, and we traveled from Ramses through the Yam Suf, the Red Sea, and we've traveled to Sinai, and we've been here 1 year. And now in the second month, on the first day of the second month, after leaving Egypt, Adonai said, this is the word of Adonai, take a census of the whole community of the sons of Israel, Bnei Israel. Take a census. The word, therefore, take a census is actually count heads. They counted heads. 1 head, 2 head, 3 head, 4 head, 5. We have so many heads. And every clan, every family counted the heads. And they were added up. And every tribe counted the heads and they were added up. And we're going to talk about those additions. These are the sheep of his pasture. These are the original 12 tribes and their members who left Egypt. This is Israel in the wilderness. Bnei Israel. By the way, the counting was only Bnei Israel, only the sons of Israel. The women weren't counted. In fact, in any of the census, women were never counted. The children were not counted unless they were part of the Levites. But of the men, we're going to see what they were done. Take a count of the names of all the males, head by head, every man in Israel 20 years of age and over, fit to bear arms, must be registered by you. So it wasn't just a count, it was a register, name by name, head by head. Adonai is concerned not about everybody. He's concerned one by one, head by head. Yes, Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. But Elohim so loved you that he gave his only begotten Son. Elohim so loved you individually, and you are counted by Adonai individually. Now, one of the things that the Brit Chadashah, the renewed covenant counting has changed a little. Because in the Brit Chadashah, in the renewed covenant, the first covenant renewed, there is no Jew or Gentile. So not only are the 12 tribes believers counted in Adonai, and Adonai knows the count. In fact, there's no lost tribes. Adonai knows where every one of his sheep is. Of the tribe of Asher, Naphtali, of the tribe of Simeon, not only of the tribe of Yehuda, Benjamin, Leviim, but Adonai knows where each single DNA descendant of his is at. But not only is there no Jew and Gentile, no Jew and Greek. In Adonai's sight, the children of Abraham, there's no male and female. So ladies, you are counted among the beloved. You are part of the household of Adonai. There's no rich and poor. There's no slave and free. There's no this person and that person, or estos y aquellos otros no. Those that are baptized into Yeshua are the inheritors of the promises of Abraham, our father. Because a grafting effect has taken place. A grafting effect has taken place. But again, that's another story. So it says, of the men 20 years and older that are fighting men, today the draft is, or when the draft was on, when I became 18, you signed for selective service. And when you signed for selective service, right away they give you your draft number, and my draft number was so low, I was going to be drafted. So I did the wise thing to do, because I didn't want to go to Vietnam. I joined the Navy. My only problem is I was sent to Vietnam. I did 3 tours in Vietnam. Selective service, the draft. Every young man of Israel, 20 years and older, was selected, was drafted, and they were registered just like the government registers us today with selective service. So they were all registered and assigned to fighting stations. In the Navy, we call fighting stations your GQ station. And my GQ station was in what we call the 3-inch 50 anti-aircraft guns, big giant shells. We used to shoot anti-aircraft guns. And that was my fighting station, my GQ station, general quarters. And so every one of these young men, 20 years or older, were given their GQ. They were handed their weapon, their defensive weapon, to defend the people of Israel. You are to take a man from each tribe, the head of his family, to help you in this. So there are 12 tribes. And from the 12 tribes, 12 chiefs, 12 leaders. Rosh, again, is the word heads. Every tribe had, in a sense, its governor. Every tribe had, in a sense, the leader of that tribe, the patriarch of that tribe. And in verses 5 through 15, it mentions for every tribe. And of course, the double portion of Joseph for Ephraim and Manasseh. Verse 16, these are the men of repute in the community. They were Nasi leaders. They were Nasi leaders of their ancestral clans, chiefs of Israel's army. These were the generals. These were the men that led Israel at this time. They were generals. They were 4-star generals in a sense. And it says there, Moses and Aaron took these men, and on the first day of the second month, they mustered the whole community. They got together. Today we're mustering here. To muster means to gather. The Greek word to gather is synagoga. Of course, the Hebrew word is kahal, where we get kehilah. The Greek word is ecclesia, where in Spanish, rightly so, we get the word iglesia. By the way, that's not the word that is used in the King James Version, the church. The church should not even be used. That is something that, excuse me, the King James Bible brought in. Well, let's see, we're only in verse 16, and we got a lot to go. And so he took a census there, a head count, a registering of all these young men. And again, he mentions for each tribe. For Reuben, he mentions the general there and who each person is. And in verse 44 of chapter 1, such were the men registered by Moses, Aaron, and the leaders of Israel, whom there were 12, each representing his patriarchal house. Every man of Israel 20 years and over was counted according to his patriarchal house. And the total was 603,550. This is 603,550 men, 20 years and older, fit to bear arms. Fit to bear arms. That means those that were not fit to bear arms, los viejos, those that had already served, probably at some time in their youth, but now not fit to bear arms. There comes a time when I would not be fit to bear arms today. Every time that we've had a incident after I got back from Vietnam, and I would say, oh, I wish I could get redrafted. I wish I could. I wish I could go back to my ship. I'm ready to hit the deck and man those guns, and I'm ready. But I probably wouldn't be able to run up and down those gangways and stairways and go up, the manhole there on the ship anymore. But these were those that would fit. But the Levites were not counted. And the reason the Levites weren't counted is Adonai has a separate counting for the Levites. He has a separate accounting. Kol Israel, all of Israel, the sheep of his pasture, is counted. And right now, Adonai has a counting of every believer in the world, everyone who is born again. There is a head count of all born again brothers and sisters throughout the world. Remember, not only in America, we are America-centered. But remember, Adonai counts all the believers in Africa, China, Vietnam. He counts all the believers in England, even in Germany, Russia, Uzbekistan, Bosnia, Mexico, Argentina. Every believer throughout the world is counted. But in verse 48, Vayedavar Yahweh al Moshe, and Yahweh spoke to Moses, and he said, do not, however, take a head count of the Levites, or register him among the sons of Israel, because remember, the Levites were not to be drafted. Those Levites that were fit to bear arms were not to be drafted. And the reason they were not to be drafted is because they had a chosen sphere. They had a chosen place and ministry. Their ministry was the word of Elohim. Their ministry was the ritual of Elohim. Their ministry was the tabernacle. Their ministry was that special ministry that Adonai has called many. And every one of you that is a rabbi, every one of you that is a pastor, a minister, in a sense, we are the Levites today. We are those that Adonai has called. He's called us specifically. And at this time, at this period in history, he's called those who would be apostles, prophets, those who would be evangelists, those men who would be pastors and teachers, those men that Adonai has called. In the name of Yeshua, many of you men out there listening to us and over here have already received the call. In fact, almost everyone that is in ministry really received the call when they were children. They received the call when they were young men. Yes, some of them went away. But Adonai is that one that even though we run from him, he'll catch up to us. He'll grab us by the leg and says, I want you for my service. Yes, sometimes he's brought discipline on us, and he will bring discipline on us. And that's part of why Adonai separates between what Scripture calls the layman and the minister, where Adonai separates between those persons that are part of the community and those persons that are being called to minister to that community, to teach that community, to bring that community into the place of Adonai's healing, teaching, fellowshipping, praying part. And he says there in verse 50, you yourself must enroll, not draft, not registrants with selective service, but enroll the Levites to serve the tabernacle of the testimony and to look after its furnishings and belongings. And of course, this occurred from the time of Sinai to when Adonai called David to build a house for Adonai and gave all the instructions to David so he could pass on to his son Solomon. And his son Solomon is the one who built the Mikdash Yahweh, the temple of Yahweh. And there with David and Solomon, it says, David now reclassifies all the Levites in the priest system and the Levitical system. And he reclassifies them because it says there in Chronicles that since the tabernacle was not moving around and it was at a set location, now they were to work in the Mikdash, and they became the gatekeepers. In fact, they became the cantors and the musicians. Did you know that there was music going on in the temple 7 days a week? Sunrise to sunset, there was music, there was praise. The Psalms of David were sang continually. Can you imagine? And remember in the temple, with the exception of the holy place, which was entered twice a day, and the Holy of Holies, which was entered by the Kohen Hagadol, the high priest, once a year, everything else in the temple complex was open air. And they did not have a nice little shaded area. The shaded area was around in the portico of Solomon and in a great assembly hall on the south of the Temple Mount, where what is called the Alaska Mosque is situated right now, east and west. But in the temple area, it was an open area. Throughout, when Ezra and Nehemiah taught the people from a raised area there in Nehemiah chapter 8. Read Nehemiah chapter 8. And it was from morning till noon, Ezra got the scrolls and read them to the people and interpreted them to men, women, and children old enough to understand. And in an open area like this, some of you are in your cars here and you might have your air conditioner on or turn it on every so often. But can you imagine being in an open area in the full sun? We're talking New Mexico type full sun there in Jerusalem. And they came to hear the word. They came to praise. They came to pray. The Mikdash was a place of offerings. The Mikdash was a place of tithings. In fact, a big square was called the treasury. And that's where the treasuries were, and that's where people brought their tithings, their offerings to the priests. Remember the widow's mite, that story that Yeshua gives us. That occurred in an open area, pretty much the size here of our parking lot. And that's where the people would gather. And the teachers would gather with the disciples here, that teacher with his disciples over there. In one place, it was for those disciples. The whole temple complex was a series of teaching schools. Yeshua would gather like in that corner over there by where that tree is, in the portico of Solomon. And there him and the disciples would meet. And on the day of Shavout, Pentecost, which we're going to talk about in a little while, that's where they were when the Ruach HaKodesh came. And so over here, the Levites were now no longer in the time of David, Solomon, to the second temple period of Yeshua, required to attend to the furnishings and to move this and to move that. Next week, we're going to look at all the different sons of Aaron and their responsibilities in our next Parsha Naso next week. But watch what it says here in verse 52 and verse 51. Whenever the tabernacle is moved, the Levites are to be the people to dismantle it. Remember, sometimes it was a day. They put it together, they dismantle it. Sometimes it was a week, sometimes a month, sometimes a couple of years in the 40-year wilderness. Whenever the tabernacle is set up again, they are to do this. By the way, it was always according to the cloud. When the cloud moved, they dismantled it, got ready, and got under the cloud. When the cloud stopped, they set it up for as long as the cloud was there. And when the cloud moved again, they dismantled it, and they followed the cloud and got under the cloud. This is a very important lesson for us. The cloud is the pre-incarnate Yeshua. The cloud is the pre-incarnate Yeshua. Just like the tree, the fire in the midst of the bush that didn't burn was the pre-incarnate Yeshua. And so wherever the cloud moved, the people went. And this is a lesson for us today. When the cloud moves, you move. When the cloud stops, you stop. And the cloud will always move us by His Word, because the Word is the same cloud. The Word is Yeshua. In the beginning was the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. And the Word came and tabernacled, Sukkot, among us. And we beheld His kavod, His glory, His kavod, the glory as the only begotten Son of Elohim. Well, that kavod, that glory, was the glory of the cloud by day and the fire by night. And in the day in the desert, that cloud was a giant umbrella a thick umbrella that brought a cover, a shade, and a cool breeze for the people of Elohim. But at night in the desert becomes cold. And that fire by night was a radiant heat that kept Israel warm. And the cloud today still keeps us at the right temperature that we need to be with Adonai. There are some people that are too cold because they're outside of the fire. There's some people that are too hot because they're outside of the cloud. Don't be outside of the cloud. Don't be outside of the fire. Get inside the cloud. Get under the fire. Because that is the place of Yeshua's protection. That is the place of Yeshua being with us there. And so it goes on to say, the sons of Israel are to pitch their tents in formation, each in its own encampment, every man by his standard. Now we're going to look at this further in Parshot to come. We are going to look at the idea that the formation of the encampment of Israel was in the form of a cross. Even the three tribes in the north, the south, the east, and the west, the formation of the tribes, even the amount of people in each tribe, forms a cross. And we're going to see that. But watch what it says. But the Levites are to pitch their tents around the tabernacle. And so, to the south, to the north, to the west, to the east, three tribes. But the Levites, as if this was the tabernacle here, the Levites were to pitch their tents around. And there was West Siders, South Siders, North Siders, East Siders of the Levites. But watch what it says. But the Levites are to pitch their tents round the tabernacle of the testimony in this way. In this way, the wrath will be kept from falling on the whole community of the sons of Israel. The Levites are to be in charge of the whole community of the tabernacle. They are going to be a hedge. The Levites are a hedge between the tribes and their wanderings, their dealings, everything that's going on a daily basis, and the Levites in the middle. They are to be as a hedge. And in a sense, one of the major responsibilities of us Levites is to be a hedge, still to this day, between the people of Elohim and Adonai. And that hedge is a hedge of prayer. One of the main responsibilities of a minister, of a pastor, of a rabbi, a priest, is to pray for the flock of which Adonai has given him charge over, is to pray for them. And I pray for you on a daily basis, as you pray for me. As you pray for me and ask Adonai's blessings, I pray for you. I am called, as every other minister is called, to be a hedge, to be someone that will look at this, a mediator, if you will. Of course, Yeshua is the mediator par excellence, for there is one Elohim, and one mediator between Elohim and his people, and that's Yeshua. But remember, Yeshua has called those of you that are ministers in your fivefold ministry, whatever your ministry is, to be able to pray for those whom Adonai. And Paul, if you read the epistles, I pray daily for you. I make mention of you. I don't forget you in my prayers. And Adonai prays for the congregations that Adonai has given apostleship to him. So they are to be a hedge. And then in chapter 2, which we're not going to look at, because what I'm going to do is next week, in our next Parsha, Parsha Naso, is a continuation of this. And one of the things that sometimes there are two parshot that should have actually been one parshot, because whoever divided the parshot, Maimonides, divided them according to sections, according to verses, according to paragraphs. And so sometimes even in the middle of what we would call a sentence today, a new Parsha begins. And so next week we will talk about that. But one of the things that I did say is that I wanted to talk about Shavuot. I want to take the remainder of our time together to talk about Shavuot. I got a half hour to talk about Shavuot. Shavuot is next week. And for those of you that might be listening to this study years and years from now, because once it's in internet, olam haolam, it's there for always. This is the year 2020, and in the year 2020, Shavuot is going to be on May 31st, the last Yom Rishon, or the last Sunday in May. And this is Shavuot. Now, go with me real quickly to Leviticus, which we studied last Parsha, Leviticus chapter 23. And here in chapter 23, verse 15, excuse me. From the day after the Sabbath, which is Yom Rishon, which is a Sunday, the day on which you bring the sheaf of the offering, which is the first sheaf, the Bekurim of the barley harvest, the Yom Rishon, the Sunday after Passover. So whenever Passover is, that next Sunday is Bekurim, the first sheaf. You are to count 7 full weeks. You are to count 7 sevens. Now, 7, the word week means 7. The word week does not mean 7 days. Many people think that a week means 7 days. No, the word week does not mean 7 days. The word week means 7. Just like the word we said the other day, 12 doesn't mean donuts. 12 means 12 of anything. A dozen tortillas, a dozen eggs, a dozen, yes, donuts. But it's a dozen of anything. And so one of the most important things that we could look at over here is that the word week, the word 7, means days and or years. You are to count, and over here it is a week of weeks. You are to count 7 full weeks, a week of weeks. And when you count a week of weeks, you are to count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. So today is the 6th Sabbath after Bekurim. Tomorrow is Yom Rishon, the first day of the week. But next week is the 7th Sabbath. Next week will be the 7th Sabbath in what people call the counting of the Omer. Remember, it's not the Feast of the Omer, it's the Feast of Weeks. It's not the Feast of counting the Omer, it's the Feast of counting the weeks. And I've been counting the weeks, and today is the 6th week. Tomorrow, next week is the 7th week, which is 49 days. Next week, we're going to say it's been 49 days since Bekurim. And tomorrow is the 50th day. We'll say that next week. And so it's important for us to look and to count those numbers. And so it goes on to say there in Leviticus chapter 23, you are to count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath. And then you are to offer a new oblation. You must bring bread from your houses to present as a gesture of offering 2 loaves. And this is a Bekurim of the wheat harvest. Now, remember, at Passover, we eat unleavened bread. The unleavened bread that we eat at Passover is the unleavened bread of last year, of the last harvest. And after unleavened bread, after Passover, comes Bekurim. And we can't eat the new harvest until Bekurim. And at Bekurim, we start eating the barley. And remember what the barley is. To many people, barley is just grain for the animals. Barley is a poor man's grain. Barley is the grain that is made a lot into unleavened breads, and it's not really that good for baking. But Shavuot is the Bekurim, it's the first fruits of the wheat harvest. It's the rich man's grain. It's the grain to make these loaves. It's the grain to make these beautiful, nice, shiny, brown, big loaves of bread. It's a cause of celebration. In fact, Shavuot is a major, major celebration. And it's a day, now always remember this. Shavuot is a minor Sabbath. Now today, those are called high Sabbath. So Shavuot is a high Sabbath. So Shavuot is a time when we don't work. We don't do our normal work. We could prepare foods, celebratory foods. but we don't go to work. We don't, do the laundry. We don't mow the grass. We don't do servile work. It's a day of celebration, and it's a day of sacred assembly. It's a day of sacred assembly. We are to assemble on that day. Now, go with me to the book of Deuteronomy chapter 16. And in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 16, this is further explained. And Deuteronomy chapter 16 is an overview, a summary of Leviticus 23. Remember, Leviticus 23 was given to us at Mount Sinai. Deuteronomy chapter 16 was given to us 40 years later, right before Joshua crossed. Deuteronomy takes place probably in the last month and a half of Moshe's life. And Deuteronomy is a summary of everything that Adonai has given to Moshe. Deuteronomos is the Greek word for second Torah or second law. Devarim, these are the words, is the Hebrew name. These are the words that Yahweh spoke to Moshe on the other side of the Yarden. And of course, that's when Moses is taken home and Joshua crosses the river. But here in chapter 16, he tells them again, verse 1, you are to celebrate the month of Aviv, celebrate the Passover of Yahweh. And there he tells them about the unleavened bread. And then verse 9, you are to count 7 weeks, counting these 7 weeks from the time you began to put your sickle in the standing grain. And then in verse 13 there it says, you will celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread is a regelim. Say with me, regelim. What is a regelim? It means foot or the ankle area, and it means to walk. It's a pilgrim feast. 3 times a year, there's 7 Moedim, and 3 times of the 7 Moedim, which they're blocked together, all the men of Israel were to appear before Adonai. Again, like all the sons were counted, only the men were counted. 3 times a year, all the men must appear before Adonai. And one of those times, besides unleavened bread, is Shavout. And so here, for Shavout, it says in verse 9, you are to count 7 sevens, 49 days. Counting the 7 sevens from the time you put the sickle into the standing grain. That's Bekurim. That's the standing grain of the barley harvest. You must then celebrate the Feast of Sevens for Yahweh your Elohim. You must what? Celebrate. Next Yom Rishon, next Sunday, is a celebration. It's a fiesta. Biblically, it's a fiesta. And a fiesta is where there's joy and eating. A fiesta is a time of coming together and giving that joy of Yahweh. It goes on to say, it's for Yahweh your Elohim. It's really not for us. In a sense, it's almost like Yahweh sets up this party. Yahweh sets up this fiesta and says, I want to have a fiesta for me. And he tells us, this is what I want you guys to do. And he wants us to celebrate with him because he wants to celebrate with us. He wants to celebrate. Now, what Yahweh wants to celebrate is the life of Yeshua. The fiestas, the celebrations, the moedim, the appointed times, our sacred assemblies, Mikra Kodesh, and their sacred assemblies so that we could have a fiesta, a joy. With the exception of Yom Kippur, the moedim are times of eating and celebrating and coming together and having a good time. They're days of sacred assembly, Mikra Kodesh, holy convocations in another translation. And it says it's when you give a voluntary offering from your hand. You come with a voluntary offering. Now what's interesting is that the tithe is a mandatory 10% duty that every worker has. Every worker has a 10% duty of his finances to Adonai. That's not an offering. A lot of people give Adonai offerings. He doesn't want your offering if he doesn't have your tithe. It is the tithe plus the offerings that and there's many offerings that he asks. But always remember, offerings are always optional. The tithe is not optional. The tithe is a duty. You give an offering from your heart. You don't give a tithe from your heart. Now, we should give a tithe from our heart. We should have the heart to tithe. But you give the tithe because it is mandatory. It is a duty. But over here it says you will give an offering. And an offering is a voluntary offering, a free will offering, a love offering, we call them today. From your hand. From your hand. In proportion to the way that Yahweh your Elohim has blessed you. So you look over the year and say, oh, I've been blessed of Adonai, and you give an offering. If you've been blessed a lot, you give a lot. If you've been blessed a little, you give little. Adonai is happy with whatever you give, big or little, as long as you give it with all your heart. And then it goes on to say, as he has blessed you, you must rejoice. Not you should or you can. You must rejoice in the presence of Yahweh your Elohim, in the place where Yahweh your Elohim chooses to give his name a home. Now this was Yerushalayim. In that place, yes, before that place, they did it wherever the presence was, wherever the kavod was, in the tabernacle. But once Adonai gave us Yerushalayim through David, then Yerushalayim became the place. And I am reminded that the woman of Samaria comes to Yeshua and says, our father said this mountain, your father says Yerushalayim, our father says this mountain. And Yeshua said, behold, the time is coming, and it is already here, está aquí, when Adonai is looking for worshipers, and those who worship in spirit and in truth. In other words, the time is coming and is here when worshipers will be all over the world, wherever we are, gathered together. For Shavout is a time to celebrate and to worship. And so you, your son, your daughter, your serving men and women, the Levites that live in your towns, the strangers, the orphans, the widows, You must celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days. Then it goes on to Tabernacles. Now, go down to verse 16. 3 times a year. 3 times a year, all your menfolk. If you're a menfolk over here, get your hand outside your window and just wave at me, menfolk. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. There's all these menfolks over here waving their hands. I see your hands. 3 times a year, all your menfolk are to appear before Yahweh your Elohim in the place he chooses. At the Feast of Unleavened Bread, at the Feast of Weeks, and at the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, for many years, we here at Olive Tree Congregation and Torah Unleashed Ministries, we have been meeting here for those 3 regalim, those 3 pilgrim feasts. And we've been meeting and coming together, and we meet in the sanctuary area, and all the men, just the men. And what do? Well, it doesn't tell us what to do. It just says, appear before Adonai, muster, stand before Adonai. So we stand as men, we pray as men, we come as men. And then it goes on to say, and no one must appear before Yahweh empty-handed. No man is to appear before Yahweh empty-handed. But every man must give what he can in proportion to the blessings of Yahweh your Elohim and what he gives you. And so on these pilgrim feasts, in unleavened bread, in Shavout, and in tabernacles, 3 times a year, all the men gather. And next week, what we're going to be doing, I'm going to ask all the men, and you might be listening to us and you're not a member of Olive Tree. You know what? Here we don't have membership. Olive Tree is really a teaching center for every Messianic. You might be a member of that synagogue or that church or this group, home group, or that home group. Olive Tree is a place where home groups and, whatever you are, whoever you are, whatever your identity is, you're welcome to come and study with us. We don't take your name and number. I won't send you, if you come and you give me your name, and I'm not going to send you literature for the rest of your life on how much you need to be giving to me. No. I'm not going to send you any literature saying you have to be here. Where are you? No. You are an adult. You are a mature believer. Or many of you should be. It is your responsibility. We're just here to teach Torah. We're here to disciple. We're here to give you the word of Elohim. What you do with it is your ministry that you have before you and Adonai for the rest of the world. I disciple you, you disciple them, they disciple others. That's discipleship. The discipleship is really much like multi-level marketing. How many have ever been part of a multi-level marketing scheme? And those are schemes. Many people have gotten rich, many people have not. But in a sense, in the multi-level marketing, you have one. And if that one has 5, and each of those 5 has 5 more, the money goes up and the top guy gets rich. In a sense, if we could do that in discipleship without the money part, but instead of the money going up, the teaching going down, and the one teaches the 5 teaches 5 more, and on and on and on. And think of it. If one could teach 2, and those 2, 4, and those 4, 8, and those 8, 16, and those 16, 32, and on and on and on. But as I was thinking also, discipleship And I hope this isn't a crude analogy. And it's an opposite analogy of what it should be. But in a sense, we right now are living in the time of the COVID-19, the coronavirus. And in a sense, all it took is one person to be affected. That person affected 5. That person, those 5 affected 30, 40, 50, going on and on and on till a whole city in Wuhan was affected. China was affected. Those people flew to Canada, New York, Chicago, all these areas. They flew to Iran. They flew to all these places around the world, Europe. And those got affected and they multiplied. They multiplied. The disease multiplied. Think of it. In a matter of weeks, in a matter of a month, it was all around the world. In a sense, one person preaching the gospel to 3, 4 people, winning them to Messiah, winning them for the kingdom. And those 2 affect 4. And those 4, 8. The gospel could go around the world in 2, 3 months. But no, we are silent. It is through the Holy Spirit. When the disciples, in fact, we're talking about Shavout. We're talking about Shavout, how it is about Yeshua and about the life and ministry of Yeshua. And there's so much to teach about Shavout. Shavout is about Ezekiel 1. Shavout is about Acts chapter 1, chapter 2. Next week we will start, in fact, on the day of Shavout, we'll talk a little bit about it in the 7th Sabbath. But we'll talk more about it on Shavout day. On Shavout day, we're going to look at how do I apply Shavout today? How do we apply Pentecost today? Pentecostal fire needs to be reawakened. I'm not talking about Pentecostal wildfire. There's all kinds of Pentecostal wildfire going around the world. That's not Adonai's way. Pentecostal wildfire burns down congregations. But fire in the fireplace, where fire belongs. The fireplace of your heart. The fireplace of the pulpit. The fireplace of you speaking the word throughout the world is what Adonai is looking for. And especially at this time. At this time we have been caught. We were caught unawares in a sense. And a lot of people are alone in their homes, in their apartments. And a lot of them say, no, we don't have church. We don't have the building. You don't need it. All you need is the power of the Holy Ghost, of the Holy Spirit in your life, in the Word. And we're going to talk about this next week. Again, I want to thank you. Oh, I was going to share something. You know, when we bought this property 11 years ago, and we paid $950,000 for it, and we've had that mortgage for these 10 years. Our mortgage is towards the end now, and it's coming towards the end now at this critical time. At this critical time when, for small congregations like ours, it is a very hard time. And as we are very close to the end of our mortgage and praying that we do not lose our building, I'm going to pray that Adonai would allow someone or someone's to bring offerings so that we would be able to pay the last portion of the mortgage, so we could pay it off, so we don't have to worry in the coming months and the coming winter season, because winter's always been very hard for us and our finances go down, and then especially with what might be happening. Our trust is in Adonai. But remember, as we trust Adonai, as we say to Adonai, Adonai, we need your help. Adonai calls on his people to bless here, bless there. Give and it shall be given, pressed down, shaken together, running over, shall men heap on your bosoms. And so I'm asking for some of you, many of you, to be able to give at this time designated for our mortgage. We only have $300,000 to go, and I really pray that we could pay it within the next few months. Pay it, pay it off. I'm asking for your help because you are a man, a woman of Adonai. Thank you for joining us, and we want to also invite our yeshiva program on Tuesday nights has restarted, reopened. We're going to be starting our curriculum. We do have our basket here in case any of you that are here would like to give your tithe, your offering there. It's available. As soon as the broadcast is over, we're going to have a time of prayer. And those of you that have special need prayers, I will be able to pray for you and whatever your needs would be. Yevarechecha Yahweh va'ish merecha, Ayir Yahweh panav elecha vichunecha, Asa Yahweh panav elecha, vayasem lecha shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day. Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries. Thank you for joining us on our channel. If you have enjoyed this teaching and would like to see more, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so that you can be notified when we have new videos. If you would like to support Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries, please visit us at olivetreefellowship.com or TorahUnleashed.org. We thank you for your past support and hope to continue with you. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day. Shalom, shalom y bienvenidos a Olive Tree y a la Torah Desatada. Les doy gracias a ustedes y a Adonai por su apoyo que nos han dado aquí. Y si quieren continuar a hacer una donación, pueden ir aquí en TorahUnleashed.org o en olivetreefellowship.com y ahí pueden dar una donación. Su apoyo, su ayuda es importante en estos días. Shalom, shalom.